Hey Ryan, how do I get project-based learning started at my school? I've gotten some form of this question nearly every day for the last decade from engaged educators just like you. So at Magnify Learning, we've created a free download to get you started. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or teacher, go to whatispbl.com to get started on your project-based learning journey today. Are you ready to bring project-based learning to your school? The PBL Simplified podcast will help equip you for your PBL journey with weekly need-to-knows, engaging interviews, PBL showcases from facilitators in the classroom, and PBL leadership episodes to move you towards a successful implementation of PBL. Because every learner deserves to be a part of an inspiring story, and we see daily that project-based learning helps make this happen. If you want me to answer your PBL need-to-know on the podcast, visit whatispbl.com and click on Ask Ryan to submit your question. Welcome to the PBL Simplified podcast. My name is Ryan Stoyer. I'm your host, and this is episode 96, the last one in the month, which means we have a guest speaker on. So we're going to be interviewing Coach John Bacon. He wrote a book called Let Them Lead, and what he did is he took the worst team in hockey, the worst team in the entire country, by the way, and turned them around by empowering his players. It's a great story. You'll actually hear me in their interview. I'm going to recommend that you get the audio for the book because you actually get to hear Coach tell the story. You're going to think it's like Mighty Ducks or like it's a movie that you watch, but it's real life, and we get to hear him and ask him great questions today. Our need to know is going to connect directly to the conversation we're going to have with Coach today, and that is, where does culture fit in with project-based learning? If you're a leader listening, you have thought about culture at least. And if you haven't, then you're kind of the fish and somebody said, well, what's water? And you're like, I don't know. What is water? Like every culture, every school has a culture, good, bad. I don't think there's an indifferent one. Somewhere it's moving you along. Every year I take a canoeing trip into the Ozarks. I've been doing it since I was 4 probably, and I got to take my kids this time. So when we get out in the Ozarks, we've got 5 kids, we've got 3 days, 2 nights on the river. We're just camping on the side of the river. Your phone turns into a camera. There's nothing close to any kind of a signal. There's just giant armadillos, trout, and bats in the caves. And it's a great, great time. And we float down the river. And as I'm doing that, I think that's what culture is. Culture is the current of the river, right? That's what's taking you in your direction without you maybe intentionally doing that. While you're doing other things, your culture's always moving. And hopefully it's moving you positively in that direction, right? Some people can go against that current, but hopefully that current is taking you in the right direction. So even when your staff is out doing their thing in their classrooms, the current, the culture is going with them. And that culture, as it's a positive one, is something that helps you build momentum. So then as you're adding different initiatives, maybe like project-based learning or growth mindset, you've got these core pieces to your culture. That current is moving you, and then that moves into your classrooms. And your classrooms have a culture that move your learners along. They know what's expected without being told every single step. When I'm going down the current river in the Ozarks, and some of our Missouri listeners are going to know exactly where that is. We went from Acres Ferry to Round Spring, by the way. And while I'm doing that, I don't have to paddle all the time. Right? The current's taking me, but I can paddle and add to that, right? I can add to our speed, but the current/culture is always moving us somewhere. So we want to make sure that we're investing in our culture on purpose so that our staff feels what a positive culture is, so they can take a positive culture into their classrooms. See where I'm going with this analogy? Fired up, one, because I love this trip. It's a tradition. And when we talk about self-care, you need to have some kind of place where you unplug and your phone doesn't work. I believe that wholeheartedly. But I also am really fired up about culture. When we do project-based learning trainings, we bring it to your school. When we put it on top of a really healthy culture, we really see it thrive. And in other places, we need to help build that culture. And that's why we do 3 days, because it's mindset work and it's culture building. We want to take the culture that we build in a 3-day training and in coaching, and we want that culture to bleed out into your staff and out into your classrooms. So when I say bleed out, that's a design term, right? It bleeds to the edges. It goes everywhere in your school, even to your secretaries, the custodians. Everybody knows what your mission is, and they know what the culture is. They want to know where you're taking everybody. That's what culture's all about. And when we jump into this interview with Coach John Bacon, you're going to hear him just get fired up about culture and the importance of it and how he used it to turn around his hockey team. So let's jump into an interview with Coach John Bacon. Welcome, PBL Simplified podcast listeners. Super excited to have you listening with us today. We've got Coach John Bacon with us today, author of Let Them Lead. He's got a podcast. He speaks all over the country. He is going to be our expert on culture specifically, I think, today, but we're going to let him go wherever he wants. John, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Ryan, thank you. A pleasure and an honor.
Yeah. So we start every guest with this question, and that is, what is your why? So what is your why for coaching and the work that you do?
The why for me is pretty simple. Nothing gives me more satisfaction than teaching and coaching. I love writing books, and it's what I do for a living mainly, but a lot of public speaking as well. But this has been in my bones from the start. My mom, grandmother, great-grandmother were all teachers. My grandfather was a principal. You get the idea.
That's right.
In the blood. These are the stories I grew up with naturally, but also there's nothing more satisfying for me than, look, if I can score a goal, I can write a book, whatever else. Hey, it's great and it's fun and all that. When someone you're teaching, someone you're coaching, they score a goal, it's far greater than anything you ever did. And any parent will tell you that too, of course. So
good. Well said. And I think our audience resonates with that. So we wanted to pull that out right away. As I was reading your book, Let Them Lead, that obviously comes out, just your enthusiasm for your players and what they do. And our audience of educational leaders gets that too, right? That's why they invest in their staff, so they can invest in kids. You see these really great things happen. And we know that culture is a big piece. So we talk a lot about culture on the podcast. So can you give us one of your player stories or a student story where you demonstrate the buy-in to your culture? And maybe even if we backed up a little bit, give us a little bit of background to the book so that the audience can kind of know where we're coming from.
Sure. I'll do this as tightly as I can, of course. In 2000, the Ann Arbor Huron River Rats, and I'm not making up that mascot, Ryan. That's who we are. We're the only one in the country. There are a million pioneers and bears and lions, but only one River Rats for some reason.
Yeah.
It's a head scratcher. But anyway, that's my alma mater. It's why I went to school. It's a very good school, and I loved it. Still in touch with my teachers there in their 70s and 80s and even 90s. But the team was 0, 22, and 3. The 0, for you non-sports fans, is where the wins go. So they were ranked dead last out of 1,256 teams nationwide. Teams from California were ahead of us in hockey. That kind of bothered my pride as a Huron alumnus. Then they hire who? The worst coach in school history, yours truly. The worst player in school history, yours truly. I still hold the record, Ryan, for the most games in a Huron uniform, 86. I played in all 3 seasons of games when I was a sophomore, junior, and senior. Back then, we only had 10 through 12. With the fewest goals, and that's 0. So you have the word play. By the way, I played forward too, so it didn't leave a lot on the table.
So they brought in a ringer, huh?
They brought in a ringer. That's what it looks like, right? And the vote was 42 against me, including the athletic director. My old 8th grade algebra teacher, Jane Bennett, a great friend of mine now, and really then too. She voted for the stranger. She eventually flipped her vote. So it's 3-3. I won the tiebreaker because I went to Huron, but they didn't want me, the players and the parents. So worst player in school history, worst team in America. They don't want you. Yes. Here's the combination we're looking for.
Yeah, bring it together.
Right. So I got help from Al Clark, my mentor at Culver Academies. He's the math department chairman. And we got it turned around. The short version is within 3 years, we were 17, 4, and 5. We were number 53 in the nation. We'd passed 1,203 teams, 97% in just 3 years. And I did not cut one player from the 0, 22, and 3 teams. So they became sophomore, juniors, seniors in many cases. So they saw the whole thing.
I'm just going to interrupt, Coach, if I can, because that's one of my favorite parts of the book. And I would recommend, listener, that you get the audio. Get the paper copy too, because you're going to want it. But get the audio so you can hear Coach read it to you. And you just keep thinking, well, obviously this is a movie and it's fictional, it's been made up, but no, it's just the turnaround's amazing. But you didn't come in and wipe the slate clean and bring in a bunch of ringers, right? It was like, and this is what I want to relate to our listener is like, you came in with what you had, with the current culture, with the current players, and then was able to flip it around and really change the lives of those players. That's exciting.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate that, and thanks for reading it. And just met last night with Jim Bernstein, who did Mighty Ducks 3. He and I are turning this into a screenplay now, so that's got that potential.
Oh, perfect. That's exciting.
Here we go. But my mom, she's 87. She was so pleased to hear what you just said, because her whole point about these CEOs who come in and they wipe the slate clean, brand new set of executives and so on. All right, you're basically cheating. And she said, teachers can't do that. Teachers, you go in, those are the students you're given.
That's right.
Private or public, they're yours. And it's your job to figure out how to turn this group, which you cannot change, this group has to be the one that gets you there, that gets themselves there. And that's the model that I admire so much more than the sweep it clean model that you have mentioned. So that's too common in business. It's impossible in education. So here we go, folks. So
even for our listener that, you're a principal, like with the current teacher shortage, you also don't get a chance to wipe the slate clean. Like you really need to. So I really think this is an important podcast for us. So I really want to hit that at the foundation. So go ahead, Coach.
I appreciate that. So we're both down to 3 main lessons. And the first one, and they may seem contradictory, so stick with me here. But the first one comes from Al Clark, my mentor. I said, okay, look, and I'll get to the student, by the way, here shortly. But I said, okay, what do I do? And Al, by the way, has the record, 1,017 wins, most wins of any high school coach in America in hockey. And I started with an outdoor rink with 12 kids who never skated before, bought them skates in South Bend, third year the state champs in Indiana in 8 straight years. And then they had a second program and a third program. Now they have 3 women's programs, and they're all winning state titles. And he's producing NHL players. It's amazing. And again, math department chairman, which, trust me, in hockey, is not very common. I love the sport dearly, but we are not known. Cross country, tennis, these sports tend to be the academic stars of your school. But so Al, I said, okay, what do I do? And he said, the first thing you've got to do is to make it special to play for Huron. And I said, well, we're already the worst team in America. That's pretty special. And he said, no. He ignored my stupid little joke. And he said, no, the easiest way to make it special is to make it hard, which is utterly paradoxical. And it's the exact opposite of what everyone else telling me. Kids today won't put up with this. They're lazy, entitled, self-motivated, blah, 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 all this stuff, self-interested. So I said, all right, what chance do I have? Let's do it. And you think about it, Navy SEALs, they take 6%. Peace Corps takes 1 out of 6. And you need a very good college degree, rigorous interview process to dig ditches in some of the poorest countries in the world for a few $100, and they take 1 out of 6. And the key, and this definitely applies to education. And by the way, there's one thing I'm passionate about. This is it. My degree, master's degree, is in education. And that is this, that you can't sell their salary, and what school really can. Right. Anybody you want is smart enough and hardworking enough to make a lot more money doing something else. That's just a given as a rule. So what do? You don't sell the salary, you sell the mission. And the good news, I would say, is that young people today are more idealistic than my generation is. For us, it was pay, power, prestige. These are the things that push the buttons, and those things still work on many, obviously. But I find, as a rule, this generation cares more about a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of mission. And man, if you don't have that teaching, what profession has it more than that? And none. The answer. All the doctors in the world, they all started somewhere, and farmers never. They had to go to school. So that's where it starts. So that was his idea, and that's what I sold. Basically, we're going to be the hardest working high school hockey team in America, and we were good to our word. 3 days a week, every week, all summer, all fall, voluntary workouts. But they showed up. Not one player quit. And they don't have to show up. I can't do it legally. So it shows you, and this is not the Navy SEALs we're talking about here, Ryan. This is the worst team in America. They should have pulled left and right. And they didn't, which shows you how hungry and thirsty we are for somebody to believe in you, someone to push you. And I'll end with my favorite question here in a bit. But so we took off, and now the player thing, finally I get around to it, Ryan. I'll answer your questions faster next time. So now one player quits. We're working our tails off in Michigan. This can happen sometimes. It rains cats and dogs that morning, almost flood conditions. Later on that afternoon at 12:30, when we're on the track about to do our sprints and relays, It's 92 degrees out, and it's so hot that steam is coming off the track, and you can't even see the goalposts, the football goalpost. The air is too wavy. It's that crazy. And I said, gentlemen, that's right. It's the hottest day of the year. It's the hottest hour of the hottest day, and we're lucky that it falls at 12:30 on Wednesday. If it was Tuesday or Thursday, we'd miss it. And we're not going to whine about it. We're not going to cry about this. We're going to brag about it, and we're going to break every record we've got on this track. Who's with me? And by then they all are. They're into it, except for a newbie, some ninth grader. He mumbles something. I don't even know what he said. And Mike Henry, the captain who initially voted against me, but we're great friends now, great leader. He turns to the kid and says, hey, you play for Huron, and it's harder over here. And once he said that, I went, yes, that's what I needed. And it's not from me. Look, teachers, athletic directors, coaches, if it's you versus your people, you already lost. There are more of them. You can't be
that's right.
You can't be 30 kids in a classroom. You can't be 100 kids, students a day. How many athletes you have, whatever else. You're going to win. It's got to be layers of leadership. And Mike showed it that day. That line went on our wall. It went on our T-shirts. You play for Huron, and it's harder over here. Al was right. It's a point of pride. And now they start instilling it themselves. You really don't have a culture, Ryan, until it's coming from them. And that's the title, of course, Let Them Lead. So there's a long story to know that the culture turned around with that quote right there. And from that point on, we were a different team.
Yeah, that's so good. There's a lot of nuggets in there. But I love the idea of once the culture starts coming from your people, you've got culture, right? And it's not just you spouting out, it's creating it. And the idea of, even in a teacher shortage, it would be easy to say, well, what if we just work 4 days a week? Would that help? Well, probably not, is what I hear you saying, right? Like make it hard, make it right, make it purposeful.
Yep.
So good.
And also, and the temptation, and I know this because I get it, the temptation is to grab anybody. Look, I'm not a principal, so I can't get in those shoes, but before Labor Day and so on, we need to grab a science teacher fast. And I get that. But as a rule, it's a mistake. It takes a lot more time to find the people you want. But how long does it take to fire somebody? And it's not the incompetent ones that are hard to fire. HR can handle that. It's the mediocrities. And it's not a cancer, but it is a fungus. And I recall my college refrigerator. It's gross enough. And it spreads. So don't just grab anybody. And it's insult to those who are doing great work in your building. You're telling them that I'll grab anybody to do your job, and that's not right. And now they got to help out the newbie and all of their stuff. So
you're also not advocating for only feeding the rock stars in your group too, right? So you've got this great story of, I think it's because his nickname was Darth Nader, right? So it's like the backup goalie, if I'm right? So it comes out with like, don't limit any of your team. Can you tell that story? Because I think that's an important one.
Crucial rule, never tell your people what they can't do. Not your students, not your teachers, not your department heads, and so on. Don't put a ceiling on anybody because you don't know. I know maybe I think you're only going to be this good, but I'm going to get out of your way. Let's see what you can do. So Darth Nader, yes, his name was Nate Reichwich, became Darth Nader, was his nickname, of course. He was our fifth string goalie. If you're a hockey person, you should realize teams only take 3 goalies, max. So fifth string is pretty far down the pecking order. I kept him my first year, his sophomore year. Tall, skinny kid, not very strong, not very fast. In his own words, and I quoted all the players in the book, as you know, it was a great experience because now they're in their 30s. They can look back and have some perspective. But as he said in the book, he could not stop a beach ball, which is not good for a goalie. That's
right.
But I liked the kid so much, and we had 2 seniors about to graduate, so I needed 3 goalies the next year, and one broke his ankle and some other stuff. So I figured out a way to alternate practice times with him and the 4th string goalie. So they both got some experience, got to be around the team, figured out how we work. So now we have 3 goalies the next year. We're 6-5. We're much better than the year before. Same players again. But we have a problem in goaltending, and that is that the 2 goalies we've got, 2 very good guys. I like them very much to this day. 2 very good goalies, but they didn't like each other. They're bringing each other down. It was affecting the whole team. And crucial rule here, that you have to be very impatient with behavior, but patient with results. All right. On your math scores, geography, whatever we're teaching these days, whatever you're doing, it takes a while. I mean, it's a slow process. Learning is naturally a slow process, but behavior isn't. Behavior is showing up on time, ready to work, feet on the ground, pencil out, focused, let's go. And you raise your hand and all this other stuff. I mean, you can run your class any way you want. Whatever your rules are, stick to them. But patient with the results, impatient with the behaviors. So what was driving me nuts, the results weren't pleasing me because we outshot 10 of 11 teams we should should be 10-1 or 6-5 to bring each other down. But it's the behavior that drives me nuts. We only had 2 rules: work hard, support your teammates. That works in a classroom too, by the way. Mine at the University of Michigan. Work hard, support your teammates. That's it. These guys weren't doing it. So we've got a great team coming in, Grosse Pointe South. They're ranked 7th in the state. We've never beaten them in 20 years. We have very little chance that night. We put Darth Nader in there. I'm thinking we're going to get shelled, but we don't tell him that. And man, oh man, what happens? Huron 5, Grosse Pointe South 3. Ryan, to this day, I have no idea what the heck happened that night. I really don't know. The other coach gave me all the credit saying, wow, this team's got a great system and they're believing their coach. No, this coach is lucky as can be, is what this is. Because I thought we're going to get killed that night. Yeah. And Darth looked great. Nader looked great. And the rule is this, also write this one down: water all the plants. You don't know who's going to grow, when, how far, how big. But I guarantee you this, no matter how hard they are, without water, that plant will not grow. Don't play teachers' pets. Don't play coaches' favorites. All that stuff gets you in trouble, and it demotivates the entire class. It demotivates the entire team. And we rode Nader for a year and a half. He was our starting goalie from that point on. Got to the Final Four with him. So you got to assume that guy did the job. So, and we're still good friends. But that was a fun story.
Yeah, so good. Love that one. You also had, and I know you'll say this in your humble way, you didn't do this all on your own, right? You had a support staff.
Far from it.
Right? And you say that in the book. I think you do a nice job of emphasizing the importance of your support staff and their different roles. So can you talk about that and maybe shade it towards education? Maybe why?
Absolutely.
So, right. If I'm a principal, I've got an assistant principal, I've got coaches. How do we help that with leadership?
Few things. One is, so the first thing, we have high expectations. Second thing, we had layers of leadership. So now I'm giving back. First thing is my high expectations. Second thing is how we're all going to work together. So on that front, 2 levels. One, I had my assistant coaches, and 2, I had my team. Assistant coaches, Warren Buffett's great line is, if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, get a better room.
Yeah, that's right.
And Warren Buffett said he doesn't think he's ever been the smartest guy in any room he's been in, which I might doubt, but that's his approach. My goal is to be the dumbest guy on the coaching staff, and I greatly exceeded my expectations. I was by far the dumbest guy.
But also, in the book, you kind of tell us who your coaches are. You picked rock star assistant coaches, right? Unapologetically.
Absolutely. No, I would read Rob Brown, who played in Sweden, played at the University of Michigan. Tim Halbert played for Michigan. We had 3 or 4 other players who are some of the best in the city, which is a good hockey city. I was almost certainly the worst player by far on that bunch. And these guys were they had their MBAs. They were, running architectural firms. These were not lightweights, and I paid them nothing. So when you sell a mission, you can get surprisingly good help. You got a sweatsuit and hockey gloves. That's all you got. And these guys kept coming. They're great. They kept coming for the players, to be honest. So that's one segment of leadership. They came down for me as a favor for a little while, but the players suck you in, and anyone in education knows this. But now with the players, we had a line on our team that those who lead by example, got a name for those guys, they're called sophomores, because all that means is you know your job and you can do your job, and that's great. You have a job, you get a jersey, you get a install in our locker room, you get a place in our bus. All right, you're just on the team. All right, junior year, know your job, do your job, know everyone else's job too. Senior year, know your job, do your job, know everyone else's job too, and help them do their jobs better. And if I'm running a high school, Tompkins High School in Houston, they're doing this right now. I spoke to those guys about a month ago or so. That's the way it's got to be. Again, if it's the principal versus the school wins. Too big. So the vice principal has to have some power there, obviously, and lead by example, and know everyone else's job too. And there have to be layers of leadership. It can't just be you versus them. So that was crucial amongst the players, and it's crucial amongst the coaching staff as well. Even in my classroom at Michigan, I put the seniors in charge of the class. They're in charge of class conduct. I try to coach my class as a team, basically, and it works.
Yeah, that's super good. I love that term, layers of leadership. You've got a lot of great little phrases that seem to work well. You mentioned it earlier: work hard and support your teammates. Those are your only 2 rules on the team. And I could go put that up on my wall, but I'm not sure I'm ready to live that right now. How do you get to 2 rules, right? Most teachers have, 14 rules or group norms. How do you really siphon that down to 2?
It came from Rob Palmer, a friend of mine who played at Michigan. He's an All-American, played in the NHL for 6 or 7 years. Came back to Michigan, got his MBA, and done very well in business. So this is an unusual guy himself. Did quite well. And he told me, leaving the rink one night, when we were playing together with the Michigan Old Timers. And he said his dad in Toronto, as a Pee Wee hockey player, his dad said, just focus on those two things and don't worry about anything else. And I thought, that's genius. It's so simple, but don't confuse simple with easy. It's so simple, but how many schools do it? How many companies do it? Do that consistently. And who would not want to work at a school where, everyone's going to work hard and everyone's got your back? Wow. I mean, people don't want to leave that school. So get that going. The other crucial thing about this, as I said earlier, those are just behaviors. We can do that. We're in complete control of these things every single day. It's got nothing to do with budget cuts or the rain or the weather or whatever the district does or the state does or the parents do, whatever else. Those two things I can do every day, no matter what. It's a choice I make. And if you do those things, the other things start mattering less. You start chipping away at those things. And it also mattered my first year. We won our first 3 games, which is great. We won more games in a week than we had won the 2 previous seasons combined. So that's improvement. We got to play the state champs, Trenton. They're considered by USA Today the best high school hockey program in the nation, and they might be. 14 state titles. They've got NHL players, all this stuff. They kicked our butts that night, 13-2. And I'll remind your viewers, by the way, and your listeners, that this is high school hockey, not football. That's not 2 touchdowns and a safety. No,
that's right.
Those come in increments of 1. That was a very long evening. I knew their fight song by the end of the night, so that's how bad that was. And the kids were very dejected. They were very demoralized, and they're throwing their gloves and they're throwing their sticks in the locker room afterwards. I said, "Hey, stop! I saw what you saw. We got our butts handed to us by the state's best team, and that's where we are. I'm not going to lie to you. That's how far we have to go." But that's not what's important here at Huron. Our values are all that I ask you to care about. What are they? And they mumble them, work hard, support your teammates. No, what are they? Start yelling them back and forth like we're supposed to all summer and all fall. And I said, okay, do we do those things tonight? And they think about it and said, actually, we did. I said, that's right. You guys went hard the entire night, getting our butts kicked. They didn't work hard. They got bored after a while. They quit high-fiving each other. You guys never stopped supporting the goalie. All 5 players did it after every goal. Times 13, by the way, that's 65 tries. That's how many times they always support the goalie. So that's very hard. Tonight was heroic. We define ourselves, not the world. We define ourselves. And it empowers you to take control of your own situation. We'll grade ourselves on our grades, not yours, ours. And that is, especially when trying to rebuild something, that's very powerful and very helpful. And because the score's not going to be there at first. Like I said, results take time, but behaviors don't.
Yeah, that's a good message, Coach. And I want us to sit on that for just a second because, you have maybe a new principal listening who just got a building and maybe they're trying to turn it around, right? Or the state test scores come out and they're not what you thought they would be because we did all these things. So when you've got 2 rules, how do you, if I'm not living up to them, is maybe one direction, or how do you, like you did with the team, you encourage? How do you see we use these 2 rules the most? Is it more, making sure that I'm not slacking, or is it more like building me up? How do you do that?
It's more for sure building you up.
Okay.
I was, a demanding coach, no doubt about it, but I still see my players when I travel the country for speeches and so on. It's great to see them. I saw Keith Ferris in Minneapolis when I gave a speech for Ameriprise up there, good friends up there. And he said, you actually didn't yell that much. You didn't get mad that often. You had a sense of urgency and you had a sense of let's go. All right, we can do this. I know you can do more. But it wasn't yelling at them as, in the normal fashion. It's counterproductive, especially with the current generation, I think. By the way, a male-female difference to some degree, and you can get in trouble very fast in this category, I know, but I've coached women, I've coached men, and it ain't the same. The boys, a teenage boy in a locker room, you got to yell 2 or 3 times before they realize that somebody in this room is trying to talk to me now. All right, it's the styrofoam that insulates our craniums at 16 as boys. So you've been around them, you understand, and I was one of them myself. The women, there's no need to yell at them, and it's counterproductive, and you can lose them forever. A look will do it. Again, these are broad stereotypes, but there are some differences there. But anyway.
Yeah, but I also heard you say that it's really an empowering piece, right? If this is the mission, absolutely, we're going to continue to work towards the mission despite maybe, again, in education test scores or maybe even public opinion. That's a big piece for schools, that if you get a bad rap in the newspaper, even if you're working really hard in the schools, that could be tough to take.
It is tough to take. And look, we got bad raps in the paper ourselves.
Yeah, right.
When we got smoked 13-2, the other coach, the Trenton coach, ended up being a great friend of mine, but he lit us up. And there's your, top of third of the page, and there we are getting blown up, and oh, great. All right. It's more important than, look, you have PR staffs now in districts and so on, those got to do their job, get the good word out. You can be humble, but you can't be quiet. When you have good news, share it, get it out there. Don't be shy about that. But if you focus on the externals, you're going to lose the internals. And to me, it's like a campfire. Your job is to build a campfire. If you do a good job, people are going to come around and be attracted to that. And the temptation is to start handing out s'mores and whatnot and forget the fire. You do that, the fire goes out, they all are going to leave. All right. So your job, forget the s'mores for a moment, handle the fire. Handle the fire. You're in control of the fire. Don't worry that much about the press and all that. Do your best. It does matter. I get it. And it mattered to us too. But there's no replacement of getting back to work on Monday and doing a better job. That's what matters. And over time, it's water on a rock. It happens faster than you think. That same team that got blown out 13-2 a year and a half later, our second season, we played Trenton at their place. And we lost 3-2 in the regional final, but we outshot them 30-27. It was a hell of a game. Their fans gave my guys a standing ovation. That's how impressive it was. They know hockey, but that's how fast. You think you're just chipping away bit by bit, but man, you look up and you realize, wow, these guys are good.
Yeah,
how'd that happen?
That's right.
Ask all the rest in teaching, same thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we started the conversation probably around relationships. And as you read Let Them Lead, as you read your book, you've got these great stories of your players now, like pouring into the book. Like, this is what I was thinking. This is what happens. And you've got such great relationships with them even today. The culture obviously worked, like for results and for growing good humans, right? So what would you say to principals who are kind of on the fence about focusing so much on building a culture?
Don't get on the fence. Get off that fence as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Look, culture is not part of the job. It's the whole job, honestly. If the culture is working, the details take care of themselves. All right. The players can handle their own discipline in many cases. A lot of things. By my third year, instead of a 10-game losing streak, we got a 14-game winning streak. That was the easiest coaching I ever had. All right. Why? Because during the 10-game losing streak, we stuck to the culture. Just work hard, support your teammates. We'll get through this. All right. But we can't ever lose sight of those things. So that's what we did. And then finally, after the 14-game winning streak finally came to an end, we had 2 losses in a row to Trenton again by 1 goal. So we're getting closer. But we're now we're equal now. At least we're on their level. And then local school, our rival, they brought in a goalie from Finland, which I call cheating. It's not. It's utterly legitimate. But there we go. So all right, 2 losses. What do you do? All right, now you test your culture big time. I called up my captain, whom I saw yesterday on the ice. We're both coaching our kids together now, Chris Fragner. And I said, tomorrow night, you seniors are going to coach, not play, coach the entire game. We're playing a ranked team. It's a good team that could have beaten us. We're slightly better, but we're in there. And he says, what does that mean? I said, you'll find out. We get to the rink, and the dry erase board is empty. It is blank. The score sheet is empty. Pick your 20 to dress, pick your 5 to start. And in hockey, during play, you got to change players while play is going on. Mm-hmm. We have 10 seniors, at the least 5 on the bench. So you guys during the game will determine when these players come on and off. It's hectic. And these guys did a phenomenal job. We won 6-0. And we didn't win. They won. I didn't coach a thing. I didn't say a word all night, truly. And I'm a talker, obviously. When you really get it going, that's what they can do. So it's basically driver's ed. I drive, you watch. You drive, I watch. Third step is here are the keys. That's the scary one. And it takes courage to lead like this. I mean, my kid is 7 now, turned 7 over the weekend. What are we doing, Ryan? We're doing how to ride a bike. What does that mean? I got to let go of the damn seat. And that's your kid, man. And what's going to happen? He's going to bike off and everything's going to be great. No, he's going to wipe out. Of course he's going to wipe out. And, hope you don't hit the fence or the street or blah, 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 blah. It's scary for a parent. It's scary for the kid, but you have to do it. You have to let it go. And if you're a principal, especially, as one of my camp directors said on my podcast, which is Let Them Lead by Bacon.com, Dave DeLucas, run YMC camps nationwide. He said, you know what? Sooner or later, you got to let them paint the porch and carve the turkey, and they're not going to do it the way you did, and you got to shut up.
Yep. That's right.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, but the autonomy builds that engagement, right? And it
that's why they come back, because they're responsible.
Yep. That's so good. Coach, I love the book. I love this conversation today. How can people join us in this conversation? How can they connect with you?
A lot of ways. The best way is letthemlead.com. leadbybacon.com. You can write me on that site, but also we got the letthemleadbybacon.com. We got the podcast. We've had the CEO of Ford Motor Company. We've had NCAA champion coaches. We've had that camp director. We've had my famous teacher, Al Gallup, 96 years old, still biking, World War II veteran, my assistant principal at Huron, amazing leader, whose great line was, "You cannot motivate anybody you don't know." That's where it all starts. So you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter as well, John U. Bacon, and Facebook and all that other good stuff. But and by the way, you listeners, Ryan's going to be on he doesn't know it yet, but Ryan's going to be on my podcast coming up. So
that'll be great. Happy to do it. It'll be a lot of fun. So we'll put all that in the show notes and a little bit more. Coach, thanks for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Ryan, my pleasure, truly. Thank you.
All right, PBL Simplified listener. Hey, this was just a great interview. There are so many nuggets in here. I'd suggest you listen to it twice and take notes. You're probably listening to it in your car or on a run, but find a place where you're in your office and get some notes so that you can really look at your culture and how you can improve it and really get your school system moving. So that's our big piece. We want to make sure that you're going to expect victory and lead well. Thank you so much for listening all the way through this episode. I appreciate your support. I appreciate the questions that you send in. That's what really makes this podcast special, is that it can stay current and we can be talking about those things that you really need as a school leader. To help others find this podcast, it would be super helpful if you would go right now into your podcast app and rate and review this podcast. I would really appreciate it. I appreciate your support.